The police station was silent when the message came through. A terrible event had just shaken the small town of Newtown, Connecticut, and officers rushed into action. Phones rang nonstop. Parents hurried toward the school, crying and begging for answers. Nobody knew the full truth yet. All they knew was that something tragic had unfolded inside Sandy Hook Elementary, something that would change the whole country. Reporters arrived within minutes, and helicopters hovered above the streets. Even the governor was already on his way. The entire town felt frozen in fear, waiting for anyone, to explain what had happened. And then a detective stepped out to speak. His face was pale and his voice shook. What he said next would start one of the biggest investigations, lawsuits, and national debates America had ever seen. But before he could finish, something unexpected happened behind him that made the entire crowd gasp. It all began many years before that day, long before cameras in courtrooms and angry arguments on TV. Back then, Sandy Hook Elementary was just a quiet school tucked between trees and small houses. Kids played on the swings. Teachers greeted each other in the hallways. Parents waved from their cars, happy to see their children smiling. Nobody ever imagined their school would one day become the center of a nationwide story. Detective Ryan Coleman, one of the people who would later lead the investigation, first learned about Sandy Hook when he visited for a small safety workshop months earlier. He remembered the friendly principal, the bright artwork on the walls, and the warm feeling of the classrooms. To him, it was one of the safest places he had ever seen. But on the morning the incident occurred, Ryan was sitting at his desk 2 towns away when his radio crackled with a code he had never heard used at a school before. He grabbed his jacket and rushed out before anyone could ask where he was going. Meanwhile, inside Newtown, people were starting their mornings as usual. Parents made breakfast. School buses rolled down the roads. The sky was cloudy but calm. Ms. Parker, a 4th grade teacher, was writing the day's schedule on the board. She loved teaching and always started class with a smile. She didn't know that the peaceful routine was about to shatter, leading to years of questions, lawsuits, debates, and changes across the nation. When emergency vehicles first reached the school, neighbors came outside, confused. They saw flashing lights, police racing around, and parents gathering in panic. But nobody had clear information. Someone said they heard loud noises. Another said they saw police running inside with urgency. All of it felt unreal. Sandy Hook was supposed to be safe. Nothing like this ever happened here. As the situation unfolded, officers worked to secure the building and lead children and staff to safety. Ryan arrived moments later. He saw fear in everyone's eyes, parents, teachers, even the officers who were trained for emergencies. He helped gather the students who were evacuated and guided them toward the firehouse nearby, where families were waiting. Children cried, holding onto their teachers' hands. Some parents hugged their kids tightly the second they saw them. But not every parent found their child right away, and the confusion grew heavier. News spread fast, and soon the whole country was watching. Officials began piecing together what had happened, step by step, without sharing harmful details. Reporters asked endless questions. Politicians demanded answers. And online, people argued nonstop, searching for explanations or blaming one thing or another. Everyone had an opinion, and those opinions would soon turn into some of the biggest lawsuits and policy debates in recent American history. But at that moment inside the firehouse, all anyone cared about was the truth. Ryan stood beside a table, taking notes from teachers who tried their best to stay calm. One teacher said she heard alarms. Another said she locked her classroom door. Another said she guided her students quietly to safety. Their voices shook, but they spoke anyway, wanting to help the investigation. Outside, more reporters gathered. The governor arrived and was briefed in private. Parents continued asking the same heartbreaking question, "Is my child okay?" Officers moved carefully, trying to comfort families while gathering accurate information. Nobody wanted rumors or false claims to spread, especially with the nation already watching so closely. Hours later, after the building was fully searched and secured, officials prepared to make a public announcement. A crowd gathered outside the firehouse, packed tight, waiting for the statement that would explain everything. Ryan stood behind the detective chosen to speak. Cameras flashed. News outlets went live. The country held its breath. The detective stepped up to the microphone. His hands trembled. He opened his mouth to speak. He took a slow breath. But before he could say the first sentence, a woman in the crowd suddenly shouted something that made everyone turn around. Her words cut through the air like a sharp bell. Reporters swung their cameras toward her. Parents gasped. Ryan's heart jumped. The entire investigation was about to change. And that was when the real mystery began. The crowd outside the firehouse turned toward the woman who had yelled. She pointed toward the school with shaking hands and shouted that she had seen something important, something the police needed to stop hiding. Reporters rushed toward her, firing questions one after another. Officers quickly stepped in to calm the scene, but the moment had already stirred confusion. People wanted answers more than ever. And now, rumors were beginning to rise long before the official statement was even given. Detective Ryan Coleman felt his stomach tighten. He had seen situations like this before. When people are scared and desperate for clarity, even small misunderstandings can explode into huge stories. He watched as officers guided the woman away from the cameras so they could speak to her privately. Her face looked exhausted but determined. She insisted that something she witnessed that morning did not match what she had heard from others. Ryan didn't know if her information was accurate, but he knew this much. The investigation had just become even more complicated. With the crowd growing restless, the detective at the microphone finally spoke. His voice was gentle but heavy. He explained that officers were confirming details carefully and that no one wanted to share information that might be wrong. He asked for patience. But patience was the one thing nobody had left. Parents were crying. Reporters wanted breaking news. The nation wanted explanations. Hours later, when the press conference ended, Ryan met with his team inside a small room at the firehouse. Papers were spread across the table. Radios buzzed. Phones vibrated nonstop. Officers shared pieces of information gathered from teachers, staff, and neighbors. But the early reports didn't line up perfectly. Some people heard alarms. Others didn't. Some heard shouting. Others said the hallway had been silent. These gaps were normal in emergencies, but the public didn't know that, and investigators now had to sort truth from confusion. Ryan rubbed his forehead. He knew that any small error in reporting could grow into a major problem, especially once the story reached national television. Already outside, he heard people arguing about what really happened. Some believed everything police said. Others whispered doubts. And online, misinformation was starting to spread even before the facts were confirmed. By evening, lawyers began contacting families. Some wanted to help parents understand their rights. Others planned to demand answers from officials responsible for school security. And some aimed their attention toward people online who were already posting false claims. Nobody expected it so soon, but the first waves of legal battles were forming. The tragedy had happened only hours earlier, and yet the country was already turning toward arguments and lawsuits. Inside the school, investigators continued gathering evidence carefully and respectfully. They checked entry points, recorded timelines, and interviewed first responders. Nothing graphic was shown or described to the public. Only the necessary facts were collected. But even with all this work, something still felt off to Ryan. Too many details didn't connect cleanly yet. In big cases, the truth often arrived slowly, one piece at a time. Later that night, Ryan received a call asking him to return to headquarters. A parent had contacted the police with a claim that challenged part of the timeline they believed to be correct. She said she saw someone near the school earlier that morning, someone who didn't look like they belonged there. She wasn't sure if it meant anything, but she felt she had to tell someone. Detectives needed to speak with her right away. By now, news channels were showing live footage nonstop. Experts argue about safety, laws, mental health, school procedures, emergency training, and almost everything else. Politicians released statements. People online debated every update. Some started questioning the official story before investigators had even finished their first full day. And slowly, those questions began to shape the national debate, one that would later become the center of lawsuits across the United States. When Ryan arrived at headquarters, the waiting parent was sitting in a small interview room. her hands tightly wrapped around a cup of water. She looked worried, as if she didn't want to cause trouble, but felt she couldn't stay quiet either. She explained calmly that she had been walking her dog when she saw a man near the parking lot early that morning. He was standing still, just watching the school. She didn't recognize him, and something about his posture made her uneasy. Ryan wrote everything down. The investigators replayed video from nearby streets, hoping to spot the person she described. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Cars passed. Kids walked to school. Teachers parked in their usual spots. But then one officer noticed a figure in the far corner of the video, too far to identify, but clearly watching the building from a distance. Ryan leaned closer. Who was this person? Why were they there? Did they have anything to do with the incident? Or was it unrelated and just terrible timing? The team didn't know yet. All they knew was that this new detail could change the direction of the investigation. Meanwhile, outside the station, protesters had begun gathering. Some demanded stronger school safety laws. Others blamed public officials. And a few people held signs spreading early conspiracy theories, accusing officials of hiding information, something that would, in the month ahead, grow into major lawsuits and national discussions. Back inside the investigation room, the officer replayed the footage again and froze it at the moment the mysterious figure turned to walk away. The image was blurry, but one thing stood out clearly. The person was carrying something in their right hand. It was small, hard to identify. Ryan frowned. "Zoom in," he said quietly. The officer tried. The image sharpened slightly. Ryan's eyes widened. He didn't know who the person was. He didn't know what they were holding. But he knew one thing for sure. This was not in any of the reports they had received earlier, and that meant the entire timeline might be wrong. Everything they thought they knew might be about to change. And then the screen flickered, revealing something none of them expected. The room fell silent as the screen flickered. The blurry image of the mysterious figure sharpened just enough for everyone to see part of the object in his hand. It looked like a small case or tool pouch. Detective Ryan Coleman leaned closer, confused. Why would a person carry something like that near the school so early in the morning? The officers waited for the computer to finish processing the enhanced frame, but the system froze again, leaving them with more questions and answers. The chief investigator sighed. "We don't have enough to identify him yet," he said. "But whatever this is, we need to find out fast. If we don't, someone else will, and the story might explode before we even understand it." He was right. Outside the station, the crowd had doubled. People were shouting, holding signs, and repeating rumors they saw online. Some accused the police of hiding information. Others insisted they already had the full truth. Reporters argued live on television. Social media posts spread theories about who the mysterious figure might be, even though nobody had confirmed anything. Some people even began attacking families and officials verbally, claiming the event was staged, something that would later lead to major lawsuits across the United States. Inside headquarters, Ryan continued studying the footage. An officer entered the room carrying a stack of reports from neighbors who had seen different things that morning. One report said the man looked like a contractor. Another said he could have been a parent. Another claimed he was a stranger. None of them agreed, but Ryan knew they had to follow each lead carefully. In a case this sensitive, every detail mattered. Hours passed. The team went through security logs, visitor lists, and maintenance schedules. And then, finally, a breakthrough came. A school employee stepped forward and said he recognized the object the man was holding. It wasn't a weapon or anything dangerous. It was a toolbox used by district maintenance workers who sometimes checked the building early when the school requested repairs. Ryan immediately searched the maintenance roster, and there it was. A worker named Jonathan Reed had signed in earlier that week to fix a door hinge, but the system did not show a sign-in for that morning. Ryan called him in. When Jonathan arrived, he looked surprised by the attention. He explained calmly that he had indeed visited the school early that morning, before the incident happened. He had come to finish repairs he didn't complete the previous day. He showed his toolbox, the same shape as the object in the blurry footage. He even had text messages from the school office asking him to return. The investigators realized something important. The figure in the video wasn't a suspect at all. He wasn't connected to the tragedy. But because the footage was unclear and because people were already scared and angry, the image spread online without context. A harmless worker had accidentally become the center of a firestorm. Ryan felt a wave of relief, but it quickly faded. The truth didn't spread as fast as rumors. Over the next days, conspiracy videos went viral, repeating false claims about Jonathan, the police, the families, and even the school itself. Some people refused to believe the facts. They accused officials of lying, twisting the story, or staging the event. These claims deeply hurt the community, especially the parents who were already experiencing overwhelming grief. Soon, lawyers began filing lawsuits, not against the investigators or the school, but against the individuals and media personalities spreading false information. Families said the lies caused them emotional harm and put them in danger. Some even received threats from strangers who believed the misinformation. The legal battle stretched for years and became one of the most talked about court cases in modern history. Judges examined recordings, emails, and broadcasts. Some defendants apologized. Others continued to deny they had done anything wrong. Meanwhile, the national debate grew louder. People argued on television about school safety, mental health support, emergency training, and the role of the internet in spreading misinformation. Politicians introduced new bills. Journalists wrote long reports. Experts appeared on talk shows. And through it all, the town of Newtown tried to heal, even though their lives would never be the same. Back at headquarters, Ryan filed his final report. He had spent months helping to piece together what happened, correcting false claims, and answering endless questions from media, lawmakers, and community members. He knew the investigation had been handled with care and honesty, but he also knew that the world had changed. Information moved too fast now. People believed what fit their fears, not always what was true. One afternoon, as he walked outside the station, he saw Jonathan Reed sitting on a bench, looking thoughtful. The maintenance worker gave him a small nod. "Hard few months," Jonathan said quietly. Ryan nodded back. "For everyone." Jonathan glanced toward the hills where Sandy Hook stood. "I hope someday the truth is enough for people," he said. Ryan wished the same thing. Years later, the lawsuits ended. Some families won major cases against people who spread lies. New laws were passed to protect victims of misinformation. Safety policies changed in schools across the country. And the story of Sandy Hook became far more than a tragedy. It became a lesson about truth, trust, and the danger of letting fear control the narrative. In the end, the investigation proved what had really happened. The lawsuits exposed the harm misinformation could cause. And the national debate reshaped an entire generation's understanding of safety, responsibility, and the importance of truth. The town never forgot. The nation never forgot. And neither did Ryan. Because some stories don't end when the cameras turn off. Some stories keep echoing, reminding everyone that even in the darkest moments, the truth matters more than anything else.